These radar spikes are not glitches. We need to inform the minister.
The SIOANI, System for the Investigation of Unidentified Aerial Objects, was an organization under the 4th Air Zone Command of the Brazilian Air Force, FAB, now known as the 4 Regional Air Command, COMER, dedicated to the scientific investigation and study of unidentified aerial objects. It operated from 1969 to 1972 under the coordination of Major Gilberto Zani de Mello. Ufologist Edison Boaventura possesses an original SIOANI file containing a summary of the Tiago Machado case, which occurred in February 1969. The report was prepared by the 4th Air Zone Command, now 4 COMER, concerning an incident that took place in the Cambuci district of São Paulo, the capital of the Brazilian state of the same name. Brazilian Air Force documents identify the Tiago Machado case as one of the organization's most significant investigations, alongside the Maria Sintra case, which occurred in the city of Lins on August 25, 1968. The Tiago Machado incident played a major role in accelerating SIOANI's UFO investigations. It was one of the organization's earliest cases and took place in the city of Pirassununga, in the interior of São Paulo state, Brazil. The encounter occurred on February 6, 1969. According to the official documents, a power outage occurred in the surrounding area during the flying saucer sightings, as the electrical grid failed. Even landline telephone service was disrupted. The case involved the landing of an unidentified craft and a direct encounter between the witness and 2 of its occupants. The object left physical traces on the ground. According to an official SIOANI document, after the encounter, Tiago Machado drank approximately 2 liters of water while being treated at the hospital. Contemporary press reports from 1969 stated that between 300 and 500 people witnessed the flying saucers landing in Pirassununga from a distance. In the 1990s, journalist Cesar Tralli interviewed Tiago Machado in the city of Cajamar, where he was living at the time. In 1969, the year the incident occurred, Tiago Machado was 19 years old and earned a living selling grapes in Pirassununga, a city in the interior of São Paulo state, Brazil. He lived in the Vila Pinheiro neighborhood. One morning, Tiago Machado was asleep at home when a flying saucer landed in a field of capim gordura, Melinus minidiflora, a type of grass commonly used for cattle pasture. His mother woke him, telling him that a flying saucer had landed on a vacant lot near their house. Tiago replied that flying saucers did not exist. However, because his mother was so insistent, he decided to go and see for himself. He assumed that people had probably mistaken a helicopter for something unusual and intended to explain to his mother what it really was. It was around 7:30 a.m. on February 6, 1969. He got dressed, placed a pair of binoculars around his neck, and headed outside. Once on the street, he looked through the binoculars in the direction everyone was pointing. To his astonishment, he saw that the object was unmistakably disc-shaped. It was, in his view, unquestionably a flying saucer. From a distance, Tiago observed the object resting in the capim gordura pasture. More than 60 people had gathered on his street to watch the flying saucer that had landed in the distant field. Tiago asked if anyone would accompany him to investigate the object, but none of them was willing to do so. Since no one accepted his invitation, he decided to go alone. His neighbors remained on the street, watching as he walked toward the object by himself, too frightened to approach the strange disc-shaped craft. In the days leading up to the incident, several flying saucer sightings had already been reported in Pirassununga. As he climbed over a fence to enter the field, Tiago began to feel apprehensive. Nearby was the Institute of Animal Science, where the gatekeeper, Mr. Francisco, was a friend of Tiago Machado. At the gatehouse of the Institute of Animal Science, Tiago Machado approached the gatekeeper, Mr. Francisco, and explained that a flying saucer had landed nearby, but that he was afraid to investigate it alone. He asked whether Francisco would accompany him, and Francisco agreed. Carrying a sturdy piece of wood as a precaution, Mr. Francisco accompanied Tiago to the field where the object had landed. At Tiago's suggestion, the 2 men split up to search for the craft, since the capim gordura, Melinus minidiflora, in the pasture was tall and made visibility difficult. The street Tiago had come from was on higher ground, allowing the more than 60 onlookers gathered there to watch the two men from a distance. Tiago was the first to locate the landed craft. He observed that it rested on a tripod landing gear. The object was completely silent and appeared to be fully sealed, with no visible openings. Tiago cautiously approached to within approximately 15 meters, about 50 feet, of the craft. According to his account, the flying saucer was remarkably beautiful, truly beautiful, as he later described it, and he stood there for a moment, simply admiring it. Then, suddenly, a hatch on the top of the craft opened. Two beings, approximately 1.5 meters, about 5 feet, tall and dressed in form-fitting, aluminized suits resembling astronaut gear, emerged. They descended gracefully, appearing either to float or fly, before touching down on the ground between the craft and Tiago Machado. The two beings landed approximately 2 meters, about 6.5 feet, apart. At their closest, they remained about 8 meters, roughly 26 feet, away from Tiago Machado. Tiago also observed two additional beings inside the craft, visible through a window resembling a windshield. Based on his account, there were at least 4 occupants in total, although only 2 emerged from the flying saucer. The beings wore form-fitting suits with flexible folds at the elbows, knees, and shoulders. Their boots appeared to be fastened with buttons. One feature that particularly caught Tiago's attention was the unusual position of their thumbs, which appeared to be aligned with their wrists, while their other 4 fingers looked otherwise normal. They wore helmets fitted with 2 antenna-like projections. Looking through the helmet visors, Tiago could make out their faces. Their skin appeared yellowish, wrinkled, and covered with marks resembling scars. On both beings, the left eye was positioned noticeably higher than the right, near the forehead, while the right eye was located at what appeared to be a normal level. The creatures had small mouths and flat noses. A tube-like device extended from the lower portion of each helmet. Tiago believed this apparatus was responsible for the guttural, hoarse sounds the beings produced while communicating with one another. Although the beings spoke to him, Tiago could not identify their language and was unable to understand what they were saying. He asked the beings where they had come from, whether from the north, south, east, or west, while pointing toward each of the 4 cardinal directions. In response, the beings held their hands parallel to one another and made a series of downward and rotating motions. Believing they might not have understood, Tiago repeated both his question and the gestures indicating the cardinal directions, asking again, "Where do you come from? North, south, east, or west?" The beings responded with additional arm movements that appeared to be an attempt to answer his question. One possible interpretation, proposed later by researchers, is that they understood Tiago to be asking about their place of origin. Their gestures seemed to imitate the motion of a vortex or whirlwind moving through a tunnel, as though they were attempting to communicate an origin beyond the conventional cardinal directions. Some have speculated that this could have implied an origin outside ordinary space, or even from another time or another universe, but this interpretation remains speculative and is not supported by independent evidence. Tiago Machado did not understand the being's gestures, so he repeated both his question and his motions indicating the cardinal directions. The 2 astronaut-like figures responded by repeating the same gestures they had made before. At that point, Tiago began to feel frightened. Hoping to calm his nerves, he took a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and lit one with his lighter. As he began smoking, the 2 beings looked at one another and gently swayed from side to side. Tiago interpreted their reaction as amusement, believing they found the act of smoking curious or entertaining. He wondered whether the beings might like to try a cigarette themselves. Unwilling to approach them any more closely, he tossed the pack of cigarettes onto the ground between them. According to Tiago, the being on his left extended its hand, and the cigarette pack rose from the ground toward it, as though pulled by an invisible force. It then adhered to the being's hand as if attracted by a magnet. The being pressed the pack against the outside of its suit at leg level, where it immediately disappeared from view. Believing he might be able to exchange his binoculars for an object belonging to the beings, Tiago placed the binoculars on the ground. The 2 figures then retreated toward the landed craft, leading him to think they had become startled or cautious. Moments later, however, they returned, appearing to float or fly back to the same position they had previously occupied. The two beings then took a step closer to Tiago. Fearing that he might be taken aboard the craft, he removed the binoculars from around his neck and deliberately left them on the ground, hoping they would serve as evidence if he were abducted. As several curious onlookers began approaching the area, the beings turned and returned to the flying saucer. One of them entered the craft, while the other remained partially outside, with the upper half of its body extending through the open hatch. The being held a device fitted with what appeared to be a crank-like handle on its rear. Tiago asked the beings to give him something, any object at all, that he could show other people as proof of the encounter. The being picked up the device, and Tiago assumed it was about to hand it to him as the evidence he had requested. Instead, the being turned the crank-like handle, and a beam of red light suddenly shot from the device, striking Tiago in both legs. Tiago was instantly paralyzed, frozen like a statue, as he later described it. Moments later, the hatch closed, and the flying saucer accelerated away. Tiago remained unable to move for several seconds before collapsing to the ground. Some researchers have suggested that the beam directed at Tiago's legs may not have been intended as an act of hostility. Instead, they speculate that it could have been meant to prevent him from approaching the craft too closely and potentially exposing himself to greater danger. This interpretation, however, remains speculative. A friend drove Tiago to Santa Casa Hospital and explained the circumstances to the attending physician, Dr. Enrique Reese. According to the case records, Tiago arrived at the hospital unconscious. When he regained consciousness, he repeatedly murmured that he had been shot in the leg. Dr. Enrique searched for a gunshot wound but found none. Instead, he observed two reddish swellings, one on the front of each thigh at approximately the same height. After recovering consciousness, Tiago told the doctor that he had been the only person to approach the landed flying saucer. He said that two small beings had emerged from the craft and that one of them had fired a beam at his legs, causing him to lose consciousness. According to Tiago's account, the doctor dismissed his story and stated that he should be admitted to a psychiatric hospital because flying saucers did not exist. His friend then took him back home. Later, Colonel Gilberto Zani visited Tiago at his residence and listened to his account of both the encounter and his treatment at the hospital. Colonel Zani then returned to Santa Casa Hospital with several other military officers and requested that the attending physician examine Tiago once again. Tiago was subsequently taken to a Brazilian Air Force medical facility, where his treatment continued. Over time, he and Colonel Zani developed a lasting friendship. One of the symptoms Tiago reportedly experienced following the encounter was intense thirst. According to SIOANI records, he consumed large quantities of water while recovering. The unidentified aerial object had reportedly been detected on Brazilian Air Force radar, prompting military personnel to travel to the site of the close encounter. After arriving at the scene, Colonel Zani ordered soldiers to secure the area until a forensic examination could be completed. Investigators collected soil samples and surveyed the site using instruments designed to measure radioactivity. Upon arriving by helicopter, military personnel observed a circular impression in a field of Melinus minudiflora, capim-bordura. The vegetation had been flattened in a circle approximately 6 meters, about 20 feet, in radius. At the center of the circle were 3 equidistant impressions, each separated by 66 centimeters, about 26 inches. The impressions had smooth, rounded interiors with a hemispherical shape. An 11-year-old boy who had witnessed the incident told the commanding officer that the flying saucer had also landed at 2 other locations. He asked whether the officer would like to accompany him to see the additional landing marks. The other 2 sets of impressions were located approximately 50 meters, about 165 feet, away and were evenly spaced from one another. A sergeant photographed the landing site as part of the investigation. An ambulance driver who witnessed the event described the object as bluish and metallic. He estimated that approximately 500 residents of the Vila Pinheiro neighborhood had left their homes to observe the flying saucer from a distance. The following day, 2 specialists in radiological measurements examined the site with a Geiger counter. Their readings detected no abnormal levels of radioactivity. By then, the flattened grass had begun to turn yellowish and displayed what appeared to be a scorched ring. In 1997, ufologist Edison Boaventura interviewed Major Gilberto Zani de Mello at the Major's apartment. During the interview, Major Zani confirmed to Boaventura that the Tiago Machado case was genuine. One hypothesis proposed by Edison Boaventura is that the unusual appearance of the being's crooked eyes, as described by Tiago Machado, may have resulted from optical distortion caused by the helmet's visors, since no witness ever observed the beings without their helmets. In 2015, three ufologists, Joseph Prado, Edison Boaventura, and Pablo Villarrubia Mauso, visited Tiago Machado. During the visit, Pablo Villarrubia Mauso placed a compass near Tiago's leg and reported observing a deflection of approximately 3 to 5 degrees when the instrument was brought close to the limb. According to information provided to ufologist Pablo Villarrubia Mauso by Major Zani's widow, Major Gilberto Zani de Mello prepared English translations of the SIOANI reports for submission to NASA, the United States Civilian Space Agency. If you enjoy topics related to space exploration, the possibility of intelligent extraterrestrial life, and the future of humanity, you may be interested in Interstellar, The Search for Extraterrestrial Life and Our Future in the Stars by Avi Loeb. A link to the audiobook on Audible is available in the video description. Thank you very much for watching.